I spent over a week of 84 hours to roll credits on this game, and my main takeaway is this: Metaphor ReFantazio is awesome. Published by Atlus, known for the similar SMT and Persona series, Metaphor takes that formula, adds some signature tweaks and flair, and ends up with the best RPG of 2024. For the past 9 days, this has been the only game on my mind, besides Super Mario Party Jamboree here and there, but anytime I wasn't playing Metaphor, I was thinking about Metaphor. I dreamed about Metaphor multiple times. They gave you a 7-hour demo to get acquainted with before release, which you can still go play if you're on the fence. It's safe to say that even though the game gets consistently better as it goes on, if you're not hooked by the end of the demo, I don't imagine anything will change afterwards. But progress carries over to the full game, so by all means give it a shot. It's an Atlus RPG, which means cutscenes out the wazoo. It's a story-heavy game, and you need to accept that on entry. Luckily, the story is grand and engrossing, but we'll get to that category later on. When you do get to the meat and potatoes combat, first impressions can be deceiving. You start with basic attacks and a single spell, and your allies auto-battle on their turns, but eventually you'll have full control of all your party members, and everyone will have access to an insanely flexible suite of interchangeable abilities based on what you have them inherit and spec into. The depth of customization is probably the combat's biggest strength. Your party members do have inherent proficiencies and classes that are more suited to them, but even those classes, in this game called archetypes, require mastery of other fields in order to keep upgrading and evolving them. So like if your dude is a knight who wants to become a magic knight, they have to master the knight archetype and level up a certain amount with the mage archetype too, which is also beneficial because classes can inherit a certain amount of skills from other classes they've studied, so you can create these versatile or hyper-specialized builds that are very satisfying to bring into battle. Want a berserker who also heals the party? How about a ninja who uses light magic for some reason? Maybe a royal knight who's inherited defensive passives from multiple other trees to become an infallible tank? You can make it wacky or optimal, the choice is yours. The calendar system and bond ranks from Persona are back, but optimized in ways that I think make it more intuitive. As someone who played Persona 5 all the way through, I find that the fear of wasting time or failing to make things happen before certain deadlines is much less of a factor in Metaphor. For one, your companions don't gain rank based on conversational options and dialogue, which means you don't have to have a damn guide open to make sure you're simping for them properly. Instead, they're guaranteed to gain rank during specific hangout scenes you initiate when they're ready, either because you're far enough into the story, or it's a certain time of day, or you're high enough in a certain personal attribute like wisdom or courage. Even those attributes, another holdover from Persona, are much easier to raise with specific activities or as a reward for certain quests. In the end, I was able to max out all of my attributes and level everyone's bond ranks to their highest point, while completing all requests, bounties, dungeons, and Coliseum battles several days before the final endgame deadline, without looking up any guidance. I know the calendar is a perpetual sort of stress for a lot of people who play these games, but in Metaphor you really have nothing to fear as long as you're not actively wasting time failing dungeons or twiddling your thumbs. But let's get to the game graph, where we judge story, graphics, mechanics, and fun as separate categories before culminating together in a final score at the end, starting with story. Metaphor ReFantazio's story is terrific. The build-up in the beginning is pretty standard and you may not instantly get hooked on the narrative, but after a few key events happen, the game hits its stride and reveals the larger framework of your goals, which are instantly compelling. Because it's the crux of the entire rest of the game after the first couple hours, I'm just going to go ahead and say that the plot becomes a popularity contest for the throne, where any person could be king if they garner enough support. That's just a cool narrative foundation. Everyone has their own message and platform to run on. Major candidates will face each other in a battle of steel and ideals, engaging in debates, sabotage, subterfuge, and straight-up murder for the throne. And we're a part of it from start to finish. Virtually every kind of political ideology is represented. You've got religious zealots, communists, fascists, literal Nazis, hedonists, narcissists, radicals, authoritarians, you name it. I appreciate that when it comes to representing such a diverse range of beliefs, none of them feel particularly cartoonish. They all seem written earnestly with an intent to bring about discussion, rather than just being like, here's a belief the writers don't like, so they just make it sound as stupid as possible so they can easily defeat it. As a result of that, when certain ideologies are defeated, it feels earned, even if it's just in that moment where those ideals might pop up again later from a different angle. This is a testament to the game's excellent writing. It tackles all the subject matter it does, including otherwise tired topics like racism and inequality, without being clumsy, whereas if more ideologically possessed writers tried to do the same thing, we'd be laughing in their faces. 84 hours is a long time to invest in a story, but I cried like 4 times over the course of it and found the latter half in particular to be moving and inspiring. It drags a little bit at the end just because you keep having to do one more dungeon or one more fight when you feel like it should have been over already, but that's my only negative. That and the fact that Katharina isn't a playable party member, that's just rude. I give story a 95. Next is graphics, which is the part where you might see some deriders if they want every game to look like God of War, but even in the anime grading department, Metaphor does show some rust in certain areas. There are several fully animated cutscenes that remind me most closely of Fire Emblem Three Houses. It's got that signature choppy animation where it feels like you're watching it at 10 frames per second. There's a battle scene at the end that's so egregious, it looks like if you watch Jujutsu Kaisen while blinking as fast as you can. Given that this game isn't on Switch, it is kind of weird to me that it's running with the same quality as a Switch exclusive. I've heard people say it looks like a PS2 game, to which I say please look again at an actual PS2 game instead of the nostalgia-colored remake that exists in your mind, but Metaphor does look like a Switch game, and that's nearly as much of an insult. It's been too long since I played Persona 5, so I can't compare the two graphically. This might be par for the course for an Atlus game, but in an age where we're seeing better animated visuals from gacha games, I think it's fine to expect a bit more from a game like this, especially with how front and center the art style and animation is. The monster designs are as unique and demented as ever, but everything else needs a tune-up. I'm giving graphics a 60. Now for mechanics, I'm not sure I have a single complaint. The combat flexibility is tremendous as aforementioned, and as far as actual battles go, I love the tweaks to the turn-based system. Each character has their own turn icon that is expended when they act, but if they land a crit or a blow to an enemy's weakness, it instead only takes half a turn icon and the next person goes, leaving that other half to be used again. You're not doing all-out attacks after knocking all enemies down like in Persona 5, but exploiting weaknesses is still central to making the most of your turns, as well as guarding when big enemy attacks are on the horizon. You can also restart a battle that isn't going your way at any time by pressing L3, which is a great way to undo mistakes, like accidentally hitting an enemy with an element they absorb or reflect because you didn't know prior. This eases up on the trial and error nature of sussing out enemy strengths and weaknesses, so you're not as hard punished for simply guessing. The other huge convenience is the addition of overworld combat, where enemies who are substantially weaker than you can just be attacked once or twice and killed without starting a whole turn-based thing about it. If that wasn't in the game, it would be twice as long. It is such a godsend and cannot be overstated. You won't get too much character XP from these mop-ups, but the archetype XP used to level archetypes and the mag used to study them and inherit their skills makes it still very worth doing, instead of avoiding mobs entirely. The only thing I'd prefer was different, and this was the case in Persona 5 too, is that I wish it was easier to restore my MP. You'll go through dungeons using MP with all your skills, and by the time you reach the end, or even the middle if it's particularly big, you'll be spent. You can get items that replenish MP, but they are few and far between, either as scarce pickups in dungeons or very limited stock in shops. Certain foods also restore MP, but you can generally only cook once a day, and the ingredients can be annoying and or expensive to procure. This is a resource management factor that I would have just preferred not exist. I don't need my MP fully restored after each combat, but the Magla Hollows, aka checkpoints in dungeons, could have had that be a nice boon to add. Nothing like my Berserker running out of MP and going from doing 4,000 damage a turn to 400. I give mechanics a 95. Now for fun. Is Metaphor ReFantazio fun? Yes, in the all-consuming, responsibility-deferring way. This game was my life for a week, and it was a great week. I had a really hard time putting it down. I even pulled a 24-hour straight stint and ruined my sleep schedule because I wanted to just do this one more thing, one more hangout, one more dungeon. Let me see the whole next week through real quick so I don't forget my plan of how to spend all the days. This game feels like it doesn't end, and up until the last couple hours I didn't want it to. But even when it does, you've got New Game Plus to waltz through, where your items, archetype XP, mag, and currency carry over, which means you can equip that 400 attack sword you got at the end game and just steamroll everything that comes in contact with you. If you like power trips, that's a pretty good one. Or you can scale down your equipment and play it more standard. Your character stats reset, so you can try for a different build. I didn't use the gunner archetype much at all in my first playthrough, so I want to give that a go this time. Fun gets a 95. And now for the overall score, which is not an aggregate of the previous scores because some things are weighted differently. I'm giving Metaphor ReFantazio a 94 out of 100. Absolute blast and potential Game of the Year winner. But that's going to do it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe. Watch all my other videos without ripping your heart out, and I'll see you guys next time.